Good
Morning.
morning. Thanks so much for being here,
Morning.
everybody. We're super excited because this is obviously part two of our mindfulness reset. I just think that at this time of the semester, I mean, at all times, I think as support specialists, like this type of work is like so important for us to sort of like recharge and just like regroup and think about like where we're at and where we're going. So I'm definitely excited to be privileged enough to connect with our host Lolo again for part two of our conversation and workshop today. So I'll turn it over to Lolo.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Cheryl. I see some faces from last week and maybe some new ones as well. So welcome back or welcome for the first time. If I haven't met you already, as Cheryl said, my name's Lolo Fisher, and I'm really excited to bring this part two session. I'm going to get right into it today. And one of our first kind of check-in reflection questions goes deep because we are continuing off session one. So without further ado, I'll share my screen so we can all join together on this one. All right. So as we get into this, we're really thinking about what it means to take a mindful reset at any point in time, but especially thinking about this fall semester now that we've gotten started, but are really thinking about being more intentional as we continue throughout the semester and throughout the academic year. So a little preview, what's going to happen today? I kind of gave you some insight already. Our reflection is a little deeper rather than our typical check-in of just like, how you feeling? We're going to get right into it right away. And then practice a grounding exercise. The grounding exercise is going to be something very quick, easy, things you can do on your own or with a partner, even with a student if you're advising students in a role similar like that. As last time we did the 5 different breathing exercises, I just want to give you some more tools to your tool belt for how to decrease stress and find more moments of mindfulness. With that, we'll have a little conversation on mindfulness versus mindlessness, and I would love to hear your insights on that. So please know, interaction is definitely encouraged throughout this entire presentation today, and I would love to hear some of your thoughts on this so we can break it down and see how we can grow as a team too. Of course, we'll continue with setting intentions, which is really our goal output for this series. And I'm saying series because part 1, we talked about setting intentions and what kind of that breakdown is of how we set intentions. We'll do a very, very quick review of that today, pull up that same slide we talked about last week and put it into action today. So I want you to leave with some written down, typed out, whatever that looks like for you, very clear intentions for your fall semester or academic year. And then we'll have a moment to kind of share as community, because we know, and we've talked about it in the past, that when you say something aloud, there's not only a greater commitment to it, but there's a greater likelihood that you'll follow through and be held accountable by yourself and by others. Finally, we'll finish with, depending on our time, a short conversation on how we keep this presence that we just created in our workshop when we're having more difficult conversations. And I'll leave you with some resources that you can continue to look up if the session today really feeds you, if these topics start getting you a little more interested and you want to do some more self-study or work on your own, you'll have some resources to continue that later. So let's get into it. We got a full hour. All right, so here's lots of words, but I'll break it down. Don't worry. Here's what I'm talking about for our check-in reflection. So just by, adding a little emoji to your screen, how many of you have heard of the phrase internal versus external controls? Has anyone talked about this or heard of it? Okay, I see some no's, a hand raise here and there. Okay. So when we're talking about internal versus external controls, this is really mostly based in psychology, but we're talking about when we are setting expectations, goals for ourselves, or just making decisions. How are we making those decisions? How are we setting those intentions? What is influencing us the most? So I really like this. This excerpt is going to be linked in your resources at the end as well. But there's a book called You Can Choose to Be Happy from Tom Stevens. He's actually a professor at, I want to say UC San Diego right now, one of the UC CSUs in San Diego. And he has a list of 10 questions. I pulled 6 out based on our conversation that we had on Thursday of how to release expectations and some of the things that you all shared about it being really hard to not judge yourself or be harder on yourself than you are with others. So we're going to break down these questions real quick, these 6 in particular, and I want you really just to be reflecting on your own as I read this out loud, and then we'll have a moment to share kind of a response to just one altogether. So the first question is, do you use external or internal expectations to evaluate yourself? Last week, obviously, we talked about releasing expectations of the self that aren't realistic or are just too much, with one of the examples kind of being like when we give ourselves a to-do list of 25 things that we need to accomplish in a day, but we don't even have the amount of hours or the emotional or energy capacity to fulfill those 25 tasks. And then we are super hard on ourselves and don't practice grace when we can't accomplish those things, even though realistically in our minds, in the back of our head, we knew it wasn't likely that we were going to be able to finish those anyway, right? We do this to ourselves so often. We put out the expectations of ourselves higher than anybody else is putting expectations on us, especially as educators, as folks who care for others and work in a service field, whether that's working with students or other colleagues across campuses. So this number one question is really the external. Am I using the expectations that my supervisor put on me, the expectations that my family has of me, or internal expectations, putting those on myself when I'm doing an evaluation of how well am I doing? Am I progressing? Am I growing? And so on. So that's number one. Take a moment to think about if you're using external or internal expectations to evaluate yourself. And if you'd like, this is a great time, as you can see in the picture, like if you want to just jot some notes down or things that come to you, type it in the notes app on your phone. This is a great reflection to come back to as well. So if you have an immediate response, you can jot it down or just keep it in the mind space as we go through. Number 2, do you do what others want to do most of the time? This is a really good one to gauge because sometimes it's a little hard to say, am I external or internal? Maybe I'm feeling a mix of both. Well, here's a tangible example. When people want to do something, everybody else, do you want to do it too? Do you do it anyway? What does that look like? One of my biggest examples was this was a few years ago now, but in one of my roles, when I was working at Wake Forest University, actually, there was kind of this tradition that like everybody went to lunch on Fridays, everybody went to lunch on Friday, everybody went to lunch on Friday. And it was like casual, it was informal, it was just about connection. But I started feeling by Fridays that I was exhausted. I wanted to get like the work done so I could get out rather than staying later. And as much as I love social time and interaction, I was so exhausted that going there just took more energy from me rather than giving me energy back. But others wanted to do it. And for a long time, because I hadn't quite figured all this out yet in terms of external, internal controls, I thought it was maybe just FOMO, like I didn't want to miss out on something that would happen at the conversation, which is what some folks will feel. But in reality, it's because others wanted me to be there that I showed up, not because I wanted to be there. Was it an expectation? No, it was not a written expectation. It was a Friday social lunch hour. Could I have made it sometimes and it would be fulfilling? Yes, but I gave myself this internal control, this internal expectation of having to please other people and stick with this routine that was not realistic for me and how I was feeling week to week, which changed. One week was always different from another. Just an example. So think about that. Do you do what others want to do most of the time? Or do you do what you want to do most of the time? Number 3, do you seek approval so much that it is a must, or is it a pleasant bonus? So this is a question for all my people pleasers out there, whether intentionally people pleasing or unconsciously people pleasing. Approval is not a bad thing. Just to be clear, getting someone's approval, pleasing somebody else, pleasing a supervisor, making a student happy, it's not a bad thing inherently. The question is it a must that you please somebody else with your work, with your tasks, with whatever you finish or complete? Or is it a bonus? Oh, they liked it too. Great. Like I already pleased myself with my work, and then it's a bonus when somebody else likes it too. Or is it like, even though I was happy with my work, they weren't happy. Now, everything's screwed. Where is that mindset? What does that mindset come from? So this is a great question if you find yourself tending to people please. Number 4, do you worry about being popular and pleasing everyone, or focus more on taking good care of yourself and those closest to you? So while this question is similar to number 3, number 4 and number 3 are pretty similar in the sense of pleasing others, number 4 has this extra layer of self-sacrifice. And I really like this one when talking to folks who work in education, because there is a culture of self-sacrifice. I'm saying it not to call anybody here out necessarily, but because I had to call myself out in recognizing how much I was even contributing to this culture. If we focus more on taking care of others than ourselves, we will eventually run out and become depleted, burn out, and not have anything to give. Rather than, if we're giving from a place of overflow, not barely full, but overflow, because we're taking care of ourselves first and, those closest to us in a way that refills us, then we can please far more people. We can help far more people because we have more to give. But if we're never refilling or prioritizing how we take care of ourselves, it's a little hard, right? They say it's hard to pour out of an empty cup. Even if your cup is just barely full, you're pouring out and you have nothing to come back in, we're going to go right back to empty. So overflow, we want to overflow, keep taking good care of ourselves. But it's a question for us. In reality, are we overflowing our cup so that we can pour it out? Or are we keeping ourselves barely full or empty? What does it look like? Okay, 2 more. Number 5, do you worry about taking care of others' needs or feelings more than you take care of your own? I don't think I need to explain this one. It's pretty clear, so I'll just read it again. Do you worry about taking care of others' needs or feelings more than you take care of your own? Just think about that for a moment. Right? We're just checking reality for ourselves. Okay, and the last one. I like the way this one's phrased. Do you constantly should all over yourself, or do you do what you want to do? I should be doing this. I should be doing this. I'm guilty of this. Of all these questions, this is the one I'm guilty of most. I should be doing this. I should be doing this. It's very similar to, waking up and saying, I need to do this. I need to do this, rather than, hey, I get to. It is a reframe. It's very much a reframe in the language we're using and in the mindset that we take about what we get to do in a day. Shoulding is very similar. If you're shoulding all over yourself, then we're really just giving ourselves more pressure, higher expectations than what's truly being asked of us. So whenever you feel or catch yourself saying, I should be doing, or I should have this, just check back in. Why, number 1, do you feel like you should? Is that expectation coming from? And is it something we can release or not? And if it's something that is actually an underlying need for yourself, for example, I should be getting to bed earlier. Okay, well, let's pause here, because maybe you should be getting to bed earlier. But if you're saying it as a should, what's the real underlying need? I'm tired. Maybe that's my truth. I would like to get to bed earlier. When we're using shoulds, we're still putting things in that future tense. How do we make it present? The present is, I'm feeling tired. The present is, I would like to go to bed earlier today. And then you just ask yourself, can I make that a reality today or not? Rather than always thinking of should, which has this extra layer of putting that negativity back onto yourself, or, not having grace, which we talked about on Thursday last week. So I'm going to give you 1 more minute. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Lots of questions here, but if any are standing out to you, if any reflections are coming right away, take a moment just to really savor it, maybe jot it down, think about it. And then I'll have an opportunity, not required by anyone, but if anyone would like to share a general response to these questions, or maybe pick one out that you would like to share on, we have the space and time to do so as we check in today. And good morning to those who have joined. I know we started with like 4, now we're at 12. So welcome. Hopping right in. We hopped right into the hard stuff, y'all. So if you jumped in, no worries. I know we're recording this as well.
I'll jump in.
Right.
It's interesting because I feel like for a good chunk of my life, I was very much like thinking of others' feelings and thinking of, others' expectations and others this and others that. And I feel like for the past at least 2 or so years, I've been in this season of like, you know what? Like I'm gonna worry about me, and I'm gonna like focus on, you know, why am I even bothering to really take to heart so much or worry so much about other people's expectations or what others think of me or what. So I don't know, I feel like I've come to a, which now makes me wonder, I'm like, oh shoot, like am I a little too much like I don't care? I don't know. So, I don't know. It's interesting. I feel like I'm on the opposite end of this right now. Yeah, if
That's
that makes sense.
beautiful. Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Myra, because it is a journey. And I think season to season can change so much. But what I'm hearing from you is that you have grown in that emotional intelligence, particularly in that self-awareness category, and how you're monitoring yourself before you go out and give to others. And that's awesome, because I think last year when I met you, last year, 2 years ago, however long ago it was, that definitely was not an answer you would have given. So I love it. I love it.
Mhm. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to share any thoughts this brings up, or a particular answer to a question? Candace, I see your response in the chat. I'll go ahead and read it. I'm usually catering to others, and I extend myself out beyond my capabilities. And I'm working on modifying that. To me, I am great and talented, but at the same time, I'm hard on myself. I am working on being on time. Yeah, very real. Thank you so much for sharing, Candace. I like the word modifying in your response, that it's not always a complete overhaul or a complete change, because the piece in us that wants to give and cater to others is not inherently bad. I can't say it enough. Giving is not bad, is not negative. It's just a management of ourselves to know how much we can give and when, right? It's about designing our lives in a way that we can give best, because yes, you are great and you are talented, and being hard on yourself just tells me that you have a growth mindset and you want to keep growing. So thank you so much for sharing that, Candace. We're supporting you and working on your time and your modifications.
You're welcome. I was told to learn how to say no.
Yeah,
But
huge.
that's hard.
It's we have to train ourselves to say no sometimes, and particularly to say no without over explaining ourselves. Yeah.
So for me, I was looking at the first one, to use external or internal expectations to evaluate yourself. And I think a common theme that's come up for me lately is this idea that, like, I don't know how to put it delicately, but it's like I think we think that people are looking at you or caring about what you're doing more than they actually are. So, and not in a way of like lack of community support, but different, but this idea that like people have this like not microscope on your life, you know what I mean? And so I'm like, oh, I think I do base what I'm doing off of external, but is it really external? Because are these people actually saying these things about me or thinking these things about me? Or is this just my own internal, like being hard on myself? And I do notice that when it does come to like meeting my goals, whether it's at work or things I'm doing outside of work, I'm like, I find myself almost having to feel like I'm proving a point to someone that's I don't need to prove a point to. And so, or even some of my self-talk is like going against like what I feel like people would be thinking about me, like, oh, they think I'm not doing enough, or I'm not, but who's they, and are they actually thinking that? So that's like kind of what came up, because I'm like, I actually don't know if it's external or internal. It feels mostly internal, but I'm reflecting it as if it's external to make myself feel good, I guess. So like take some of that pressure off of myself, like, oh, it's other people being mean to me. Like, no, it's actually you being kind of mean to yourself, girl. So like let's love up on you a little better. So yeah.
Oh, Celeste, that is so on point, and I'm so glad that you said this. It's our imagined external, but that is exactly the point of these questions, is when we're getting into reality, is it internal, external? I think you said it so perfectly. So I know you're like, I don't know how to put it, without being harshly. You said it just right, because we had head nods all across this little Zoom room right now. We're definitely feeling that. And I appreciate you sharing this, because I think this is definitely echoed for so many in the room, is our self-talk is our control factor. And it's because we're imagining so many things, usually based on past experiences, but still, it may not be our present experience, right? So our mind will trick us so often. It'll trick us into thinking otherwise.
Celeste, when you said that, I was just like laughing to myself, because I feel like I do the same thing, and I feel like, especially like in an email, for instance, or like somebody says something in a certain way, and you're like, did they mean it this way? And then you start reading so much more into it, versus like, they said what they said, and that's probably what they meant, but I'm like reading so much more into it and putting all these other things onto me. And then it reminded me of like a saying that I've heard a lot more recently is like the way we hype up our friends and empower them, like talk to yourself the way you would talk to your best friend, and like be kind to yourself the same way. And I feel like I've been trying to be more intentional about that, especially having children and having a daughter now, and realizing like what I say about myself is what she's going to think about herself, because like she's a reflection of me, right? So like the way like I'm looking to pour into her and like give her like these positive affirmations, I have to do that to myself, so that like I'm mirroring like best practices also, so to speak. So
I love that example too, Cheryl. Thank you so much. I think that's something we can all put into practice. If you don't already do it today, like think about truly how, if you have kids, kids are a great example, but just anybody that you love, how you pour into the people that you love, how you want them to feel, and then check if you do that for yourself. I think that is such a great example. Thank you, Cheryl, for that. And honestly, it's a great segue. So I'm gonna bring my screen back, because this is perfect as we continue in our presentation today, because we're going to go into a grounding practice, but I'm just going to give you some insight. That next piece is mindfulness or mindlessness. And some of the examples that you gave today, just about how you feel or check in with yourself, are going to relate to this. But in order for us to really understand mindfulness or mindlessness, we're going to do a very, very quick grounding practice. And I like this one because it's so quick, but can be so impactful. So when I talk about grounding, there's, I put this picture very intentionally, because there's some concepts of grounding being equivalent to earthing, if you've ever heard the phrase earthing. Earthing is one example of grounding, of a grounding practice. But grounding is really considered a self-soothing technique that can help you be present or refocus and reorient yourself if you feel kind of like your head's in the clouds, you feel overwhelmed, you feel distressed about something. Grounding is something that just brings you back to center. Now, center for all of us is different. So there's lots of practices, and that's why, in each one we're doing breathing techniques, we're trying different grounding practices, because there tends to be something that will stick for you better than others. So earthing, if you were going to practice that, it's a very physical experience of walking barefoot on the ground or getting in touch with nature. And that helps a lot of folks who are kinesthetic or enjoy being outside. But if you're somebody who's like, I like my AC inside, I like my comfy blankets, I'm not trying to be outside, or maybe just being barefoot isn't a thing. I really love nature, but I tried earthing and had a whole hill of ants attack my ankle, and I've never done it again. So it's not for everybody, right? So today's grounding practice is something that really just takes a minute or two that we can do in any space. And that's why I really like this one. But again, it's just another example. So one of those resources at the end of the presentation that you'll get is a list, not one that I created, actually, just one that I found that I really like, because it has 30 of the various grounding practices that I've tried and used as examples of different things that you can give a try for yourself. Grounding can also serve as a distraction if you're feeling really stressed or facing some challenges and difficulties that feel out of touch or out of range for you. Grounding can help you to tackle those experiences by giving you that momentary distraction. So Myra, this is when we're gonna go ahead and do those breakout rooms in partners if possible, but I'll describe it while we're doing that. So with a partner or trio, depending on how those breakout rooms come out, because we'll be randomizing them. We're just going to give each other a minute. That's it, a minute. If you have the ability to set a timer, that would be great, or just be able to look at your clock and just give your partner a minute. In that minute, when it's your turn, you're going to describe your surroundings with as much detail as possible. And I want you to think really objectively. So I don't want you to say there's this beautiful flower outside and there's this sound that just feels so soothing, but then there's also this sound that's so annoying next door and I think it's kids screaming. I don't want you to add emotion to it. I want you to try your best, and this might be challenging, to say it objectively. I'm sitting at a white desk. I notice a white coffee mug that has a red lipstick stain on it and a white string from a tea bag hanging on its side. I see the sun outside, but there's also a shadow that's being cast onto the table that's right under it. Just in that minute, describe as much about your surroundings in detail, but without emotion as possible. This is the grounding practice we're going to try. We're going to spend 5 minutes in the breakout room. So give each partner a minute. And then in whatever remaining time you have, just talk about what your experience of that was. If it was easy, hard, and we'll come back together. It might cut you off if you're a little more long-winded and want to keep talking. It might end up cutting you off, but we're just going to spend 5 minutes on this and then come back together as a group. Myra, we good on the breakout rooms? Awesome. All right. Well, I will stop sharing and let's do it. Thank you, everyone. Okay. We got everybody back. Welcome back. I saw lots of smiles coming back into the room.
Yeah.
I like to see it. So hopefully you got to connect with somebody a little deeper, even in this very, very brief 5-minute practice. But I would love to hear if 2 people can just tell me real quickly, what was it like to do this objectively and not subjectively as a grounding practice? Any 2 volunteers?
It was difficult in our group because everything, we kept going back to the emotion of it all. And it's hard to describe it without also describing what it makes you feel or why it is the way it is. So we all found ourselves going, oh, no emotion, sorry.
Run that back, run that back.
Yeah, exactly.
Ivana?
Ivana, yeah.
Ivana, okay. Thank you, Ivana.
Mhm.
Appreciate it.
I think for our group, I think we did really good describing the items around us and things around us, and it kind of gave us a sense of who we are a little bit, and we were able to share and kind of open with just a little discussion, and it felt good.
Good. It's so I like even that, like it, although we're being objective, it kind of gave insight as to who we are, because we interpret ourselves just by the things around us, even, or how we describe stuff sometimes, right? Okay, perfect. I love this. I'll get back to the shared screen in a second, but while we're here and we can see each other's faces for this moment, our next concept that we're barely touching upon as we finish, our session today, is mindfulness versus mindlessness. So before I get back to that slide that I started showing you, does anybody want to give a try at defining mindlessness? Defining or giving me an example of mindlessness, either way.
Instagram scrolling.
Oh, Instagram scrolling, that's a good one.
Oh my gosh, I waste. I'm like, how have 2 hours passed by since I was like, what? Horrible.
Okay, great example, Myra. Any other examples or definitions?
Mindlessness could be like when you're doing things in action, but your mind is kind of like concentrating on something else, and then you're actually go back and say, oh, I actually did that already. Or I forgot that completely, just because there's so much, like your mind is not really where you are, it's somewhere else.
Yeah. Your mind is somewhere else, not actually in the action you're taking. Okay. I like that. Thank you, Candace. Oh, I think Celeste. Yeah.
Doing something like, when you drive the same route to like work or something, at that point, you just know the route. So your mind's not actually really there. Yeah.
Absolutely. So if I see most faces, but even with your emojis, if not, can you give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down? Thumbs up if you believe mindlessness is a good thing. Thumbs down if you believe mindfulness is not so good. I see. I see Myra giving me a thumbs up, but shaking no.
Yeah, sorry, take that back.
Rosa gave me a thumbs up. Thumbs down from Rebecca. Okay. Anyone else? Thumbs down, down. Yeah. Okay. So I see majority thumbs down with a couple thumbs up. Rosa, are you in a space where you can talk or not quite? Is it different than dissociating? Oh, okay. I see you in the chat. Is it different than dissociating? That's a great question. So this is where we're going to get into. I'm going to share my screen now. I love this. Okay. Mindfulness or mindlessness. The examples you gave of mindlessness are absolutely true, absolutely correct. And it's not a thumbs up or a thumbs down. It's both. It's the gray space. But here's why. Mindlessness can serve a purpose when we're intentional about it. This whole thing today is about intentions, right? So mindfulness is what we usually talk about. This whole presentation, this whole session is called a mindful reset. And we typically say mindful when it comes to being intentional and present. That's really our goals when taking a moment for mindfulness. Now, when we're thinking about mindlessness, yes, it can be distractions. It can be dissociating. I think that is an example. Dissociation would be an example of mindlessness, although not necessarily always mindfulness. So yes, or mindlessness, excuse me. I think that was a perfect example and question to ask. But let's think about when mindlessness might actually serve us. And the truth is, it's of service to us when we are below capacity and when we need to save energy. So I don't know if anybody else has felt this, but have you had those moments where physically your energy is fine, but your mind is just not, like, there's nothing to give? Like, I can't process this complex thought. I can't quite problem solve right now. Like, I'm here, but I don't know if I'm here, but I'm trying to be, but I can't. Like, I just can't quite be where I want to be mindfully right now. This is when mindlessness can serve us. And part of why I ask this for examples is because I want you to think about those tasks in your day-to-day that you can allow yourself to be more mindless. So, Celeste, I'm going to pull on something you said earlier a little bit, because when you were giving your example towards the beginning in our reflections of, am I just imagining that they're saying this about me, or they're thinking about me that I'm pleasing, right? There's this internal versus external fight within of, I don't even know if it's internal or external. That's something that we're contributing mindfulness towards that could actually be mindless. So if it's a task that you do every single day, in and out, you know you've perfected it, why all of a sudden when there's somebody new in your office are you now giving 3 hours worth of thought to, of like, did I do this right? Did I teach them well? When you know you've been doing it for years perfectly. There's some attitudes of mindfulness in terms of presence, but we don't need to overthink or contribute extra mental capacity, mental energy to something that we know we've already built confidence to. So if we actually look at the science, and there are some resources on that last sheet that I'm going to give you at the end on the science of mindlessness versus mindfulness, it really breaks it down to, if you're learning a new skill or in a new environment, or trying to actively change something, mindfulness is key and necessary to do that well. Mindlessness, however, serves us better when we are working on actively not thinking, emptying the mind, as we say. So there's even some meditation practices that you might look up and they say, empty the mind. And you're like, I got all these thoughts. How do I empty the mind? The idea is, if we want to focus on one thing and be mindful about it, sometimes we have to enter into mindlessness first. It could be dissociation if there's a whole lot going on, and in order to focus on this one thing, I have to dissociate myself from the noise, or dissociate myself personally from something going on professionally, right? Maybe there's some detachments that need to happen. Or sometimes it's just empty the mind and then fill it with only what we want to fill it with. So here's this little quote that I'm going to share with y'all from Ellen Langer, which is the person who created what they call the Langerian mindfulness scale. And it has 8 different levels on this mindfulness scale that you can kind of assess yourself with, or even assess a community with, and see in terms of, are we being mindful about our decision making and choices? Her quote says, being mindless is like being on autopilot, which is something most of us are most of the time. We don't always stop to think about what we are doing and why we are doing it. So before we go on, I want you to pop into chat 3 things that you can do mindlessly in a positive way. What are 3 things that you're like, yeah, I do this mindlessly. I can do this mindlessly. I want to do this mindlessly. I'll type my own as well as example. Three things that you can do mindlessly in a positive way. It doesn't mean you always want to do them mindlessly, but that you can when you need to conserve your energy. Folding clothes is a good one. Watching my shows, yes. I'm watching Suits right now. Yeah, and it's just moments for us to give our mind a break. Going for it, great. I love it. Okay, I see most folks responding. You can continue typing in your responses as you go. As I head to our next screen, because this brings us back to our setting intentions. If you were here on Thursday, you already have seen this slide. We're not going to go in detail over it due to time, but just reminding us that when we're thinking about setting intentions, now we have a little bit more information, grounding ourselves so that we can come from a place of safety, of comfort, of connection, and objectivity even. And then we start adding those layers of emotion the more mindful we are. So starting from that more mindless, grounded place and adding emotions with intention as we set our intentions or goals, or however you want to look at that for the year. So you can categorize them, you can bring clarity to your intentions, and then take a moment for a conscious reframe. So in the next, I'm going to give y'all 3 minutes. I know it's short, but I want you to draft at least, and this can be a draft if you didn't already do it on Thursday, because I told y'all I gave y'all homework, but if you didn't already do it on Thursday, I'm giving you 3 minutes to draft at least 3 intentions you would like to give yourself for this semester or this academic year. And particularly thinking about this conscious reframe of becoming, using the I language. So rather than the intention of not having an anxiety attack, we can say, I plan to give myself time to be calm and grounded. Maybe that intention is, or just calm and grounded, even as like more of a mantra type of phrase. So 3 minutes till 10:55 my time. I know we're on different time zones for some of us. I'll leave this slide up so that you can work on it. 3 minutes just for yourself to draft at least 3 intentions for this academic year or this semester. Or if you worked on it since we last spoke on Thursday, just bringing those back up. about 1 more minute. I like these ones that are being shared. You don't have to share in the chat, but if you would like to, love seeing it. And it's another way we can support each other. Okay, so wrapping up your 3, you can always give yourself more time later. Maybe actually put it in your calendar to give yourself some time to write out or redraft or edit your intentions. But I'm going to go ahead and challenge you right now. Each of you were in a duo or trio for our grounding exercise. So with this bit of time that we have left, it is extremely powerful when we connect with somebody else and create our community of support. So what I'm going to challenge you to do is, use this chat to, you should be able to directly message your partner or your trio in the chat. Share your contact information, whatever preferred, whether it's, if you're like texting is best for me, okay, share a phone number or share an email. Email is usually the easiest in terms of your roles and how you can connect in different ways. But I want you to share your contact information. And share at least 3 of your intentions for this semester or for this academic year with one another. You don't have to do it today, but I would say within the week. So by next Tuesday, share with your partner or trio what your intentions are, and then put a reminder in your calendar for 6 months from now. 6 months from now to check back in with each other. So here's my challenge to you. Hopefully you're doing it right now. You're typing in. Share your contact information now. First, share your contact information now. Within the week, send your list of intentions. And you can just send your professional intentions if you don't want to share personal right now. Like I said last time, a lot of times our personal and professional blends together. They might be all in one. That just depends on you. But within the week, send your list of intentions to your partner trio, and then set a calendar reminder for 6 months from now. Check in with each other. This is how we start creating communities of support using accountability. True accountability. If you want to check in more often, awesome. This is just my challenge to you and minimum recommendation to get started in some of those small ways. So I'm going to skip this part for now. That would be another one. So essentially our little recap, really we're thinking about a mindful reset as a moment to recoup and recenter as often as and as many times as we need. Last time we talked about breathing and different breathing exercises and what our breath allows us to do for our nervous system and our focus. Today, we did an exercise for grounding, particularly grounding in a place of objectivity, so that we can really get present in the moment and then reset and recenter, adding emotion as we want and desire from an internal control place, rather than just letting in lots of expectations from external controls. Last time we talked about the mental release of expectations, and this time we talked about conserving energy, being intentional about when we're using mindfulness versus mindlessness, and finally we're finishing with this community of support. So these are all just strategies. With this list, you can take off pieces, you can do what you need, but I want you to always come back to the strategies when you're feeling out of touch or out of grip, and see what works best for you, and then share with others what you find along the way, because you're going to be able to craft this and individualize it to fit your needs better and better the more often you do it. And I had a goal today of finishing on time. So here we are. Thank you everyone so much for joining and for interacting, because that makes this session so much more powerful than if I'm just talking at you for an hour. So thank you for participating, for sharing with each other, and for bringing me back, because I really do love this team and I love the work you do. Although we're not talking about this time, all of our experiences with students and colleagues and the breakdown, this one's more personal because it's gonna we need to refill our cup and take on these moments for personal development in order to grow professionally and give back to others as well. So I'm glad you're here and that you were intentional about making this time for yourself. I would love to hear with you. I would love to connect with you, whether that be email or on social media. My contact information is here. And to the growth sector team, to Cheryl, thank you so much for having me back. I really do love y'all. I'm sharing so much love and hoping that wherever you're joining from, you can have a little bit more mindfulness in your days. Thanks, y'all.
Thanks so much, Lolo. Rounds of applause. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you spending the time. I know it's 11 o'clock, so enjoy the rest of your mornings, afternoons, and just a plug for a reminder that we have the Caltrans talk on Friday at 11 a.m. I believe. I'll send out another reminder, but please share with your students. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.